of the century.
In 1950, President Truman arrived at Flushing Meadow 5 years after his historic proclamation which announced the beginning of the United Nations. Mr. Truman called on the World Assembly of Nations to bring about real disarmament through control of atomic and all other weapons. Then, the President said, vast sums now being spent for arms could be used for peace. In the reception that followed, the President greeted the then delegates of the United Nations. Among them was Russia's Andrei Vyshinsky and Soviet Security Council delegate Yakov Malik. America's Warren Austin and Eleanor Roosevelt. Evidenced by this celebration in France, the UN anniversary was hailed round the world. The United Nations had a record to be proud of. Perhaps most important, the successful stand against aggression by a truly international force in Korea. By ceremonies like these, this one in London, led by Britain's Prime Minister ATLEE, the free world reaffirmed its belief in the United Nations' future. The ceremonies reached their climax in Berlin, where 250,000 West Berliners gathered for the Crusade of Freedom and the dedication of the Freedom Bell sent from America. A wave of expectation went over the milling crowd. Free men know that the surest weapon for peace is freedom. This is the message the Freedom Bell sounded behind the Iron Curtain. Meanwhile, in New York City, the new home for the United Nations neared completion, months ahead of schedule. 3,000 employees of the UN were being moved into the new building. However, the delegates themselves met once again at Lake Success. There, retiring Assembly President Romulo accompanied Mrs. Roosevelt. Leading the U.S. delegation were Secretary of State Acheson and Ambassador Warren Austin. British Foreign Secretary Ernest Bevin and Sir Gladwin Jebb backed up the democracies against Foreign Commissar Vyshinsky of Russia. Schuman of France was among the 28 foreign ministers attending. Ting-Fu Qiang represented nationalist China despite Soviet objections. Delegate after delegate arrived. Although many of the men shown in this 5th anniversary report have passed from the scene, the United Nations remains, creating a milestone of peace in our century.